Kyogre and Calyrex Ice Rider just won the Regulation I Portland Regional. Let's talk about it. Hello everyone, this is VGC Mike back again with more Regulation I content. Today we'll be talking about the top performing teams in the Regulation I Portland Regional. As always, we'll be taking a look at the top 8 teams as well as the top performing Pokemon and usage stats of day 1 and 2. This is an overlook of the top 8 teams as a whole. In just a few minutes, we're going to take a look at these teams more in depth, but for now we're going to take a look at the most used Pokemon. These are our day 1 Pokemon. Once again, Miraidon was our most popular restricted Pokemon overall, with 41.7% usage for day 1. Calyrex Ice and Cali Shadow behind them just a little bit, and then Lunala as the 4th. Jumping ahead to day 2, Calyrex Shadow Rider jumps to 40%, Cali Ice jumps up to 31.3%, which, to be fair, is just a little bit better than where it was, but Miraidon gets beat down to 25.4%. Kyogre takes the 4th place, Lunala falls off the top 8 altogether, and Zacian jumps in at 7th. Other notable changes, Miraidon once again has a negative conversion rate from day 1 to 2 from 19.1 to 14.9. I actually think the Miraidon teams were looking more solid than they had been, but Kyogre just being more popular overall does make things more difficult for Miraidon teams. Zamazenta also did get a bit of an improvement as well, going from 14.8 to 22.4. But Calyrex Shadow Rider does have more than one partner, so the Zamazenta Calyrex Shadow teams were doing well, but Cali Shadow is on a number of different teams. He's been a very good partner for Groudon lately. He's also been a very good partner for Terrapagos. We will touch on that in just a second. So on day 1, this is our most popular pairings, our top 4 pairings. Calyrex Ice Rider and Miraidon being number 1. Calyrex Shadow Rider and Zamazenta being number 2. Lunala Miraidon just lagging a little bit behind them. Cali Shadow and Groudon lagging just a little bit behind them in 4th. Jumping ahead to day 2 usage, Lunala once again falls off the map. We have a we have a tied first place between Cali Ice Miraidon and Zamazenta Cali Shadow. So this was the tournament where Cali Shadow Zamazenta got to come back and show that they were just as good as everyone has thought they'd been. It's kind of ironic, Miraidon once again had insane usage, but it looks like people finally decided to respect that and come with their Miraidon counters, because Miraidon overall didn't do so hot. Cali Shadow Zamazenta, the team everyone's been kind of worried about since the beginning, finally killed it. They didn't win the tournament, but they did very good. Then we have Cali Shadow and Groudon bopping up from 7.1% to 10.4%, and then the Cali Shadow Terrapagos team jumps in at 4th place, tying actually. Oh, interesting. So yeah, we have a tie for 1st and a tie for the 3rd and 4th place as well. Yeah, and I think these teams, we're going to look at them a little bit more in depth. We're in a good place, and now that we have Kyogre and Calyrex, it kind of gives us even a little bit more to work with. You know, you could argue that maybe Calyrex being on all of the best teams is a little bit questionable, but we did just have Miraidon teams running around, and they just happened to have a bad showing in this tournament. So, and just briefly, we'll take a look at the non-restricted Pokemon and their usage. We have Incineroar, Urshifu, and Grimmsnarl all performing in the top 3. Incineroar and Urshifu remain the top best Pokemon. Amoonguss jumping in at 3rd place. Something worth mentioning, each one of the top 8 teams had either Amoonguss or Brute Bonnet. If you're a Sun team, you were using Brute Bonnet, and if you were not a Sun team, you were using Amoonguss. So we've talked about this before on the channel at some points, but Amoonguss is very good in restricted formats. Putting a restricted Pokemon to sleep is very powerful, and even if it can't, redirection is very useful as well. I'm sure everyone has had experience facing off against Amoonguss. It's very annoying. But without further ado, let's take a look at the top 8 teams. Starting with our 1st place team. This team was Calyrex Ice Rider plus Kyogre. I actually had a great time watching these games just because of the way the winner, Gavin Michaels, played the team. It played it very aggressively. There were a lot of turns where he would just slam Glacial Lance or slam like Origin Pulse or Water Spout, and I think there would always be some sort of positional advantage one way or the other when he was doing that. Obviously, sometimes it would work out better than others, But this team played very aggressively. I would be really interested to see if this is something we're going to be seeing in the future now that it's won a regional. But I don't think this playstyle is for everybody. Even with the Grimmsnarl having the screen options, I think that overall this, if you're going to play it the way that it was played on stream, it looks like it's going to be a bit more of an aggressive option overall. But yeah, once again, Leech Seed Calyrex Ice Rider takes the win. It didn't look like that was something that you have to do necessarily, but I think the standout thing from what I was watching was the Amoonguss and Kyogre. Amoonguss Kyogre are just a very good, very powerful duo. Amoonguss is very good under Trick Room, so if you want to set Trick Room and start sporing things, that's very strong. And then Amoonguss can also just help Calyrex Ice Rider set up Trick Room as well. This Calyrex Ice Rider does have Terra Fairy, which was something we saw in Regulation I, kind of towards the middle end area. And just makes Calyrex very hard to KO. Fairy isn't weak to a lot of things, so there were certain games, or at least one game, where basically they let Amoonguss Calyrex Ice Rider. They didn't even need to use the redirection, so they just protected with Amoonguss. Terra Fairy set the Trick Room, and then started sporing and slamming Glacial Lances. And just very oppressive from there. I think the coolest thing on this team was probably the Basculegion, though we didn't get to see too much of it. But kind of a cool dynamic on a team with Trick Room, because if you don't have the Rain Up, Basculegion isn't crazy fast, but if you do have the Rain Up, then that's an option to start outspeeding things if Tailwind isn't up on the opposing team. And then obviously Basculegion is very good into Pokemon like Calyrex Shadow Rider. I don't think we saw that matchup. Well, I guess the finals technically was a Calyrex Shadow game, but that was also a Sun versus Rain situation, so I don't think that was something that ended up getting led because, well, we'll take a look at that team next. The runner-up team was one of these neutralizing gas wheezing teams that have the ability shield Koraidon. So with this type of team facing off against a Kyogre team, I wouldn't want to confidently try to bring the Basculegion because there's a very strong possibility that you're going to end up having to play in the Sun. And that is what Gavin ended up doing. He led Kyogre and Fluttermane. Fluttermane does get its photosynthesis blocked, but basically, I'm not sure if these Ability Shield Koraidons are run max speed Jolly, but the Fluttermane likely was a max speed and Timid. At worst, Gavin must have won a speed tie, but basically, when you lead Fluttermane and Kyogre, this was threatening the Weezing and Koraidon, because Koraidon either has to accept that it could be slammed with a Moonblast, or it has to Terra Fire. What happened is turn 1, they used Terra Fire, Gavin used Icy Wind and Water Spout. Even though it was in the Sun, Water Spout at full HP does a lot of damage to a Pokemon when it's super effective. And then after that, we have the general idea here is that if you want to set Sun and you don't want Kyogre or any other Pokemon disrupting weather, or if you just want to turn abilities off in general, then Weezing's great for that. And then you have your photosynthesis Pokemon, Brute Bonnet and Walking Wake. Brute Bonnet is a defensive tank. This one actually has the Rocky Helmet, which is pretty cool. Clovert Cloak is usually the most common, but Weezing actually wanted that item here. Yeah, like every team you're about to see, we have a Spore user, very good in this meta. And then Walking Wake has the Assault Vest, so that's kind of like your special defensive wall. That also has Snarl, so it can really tank those special attacks very well. We didn't see this play out in any of the games, I don't think, but we also have a Chi-Yu, so if you want 2 Snarl users, that can be very, very hard for certain teams to deal with, especially like Cali Shadow Terrapagos teams. That pretty much shuts them down altogether if they don't have like Covert Cloak on Terrapagos. And then we have just a solid Calyrex Shadow Rider, Encore Psychic Astral Barrage with the Spooky Plate. Clearly they care about increasing the power of the Calyrex Shadow Rider because there is no Sash on this team, so that was totally available. But I think with all of these defensive options like Redirection, all the Snarls, you can just kind of get away with running the Spooky Plate, and as long as you don't just let your Calyrex Shadow Rider get hit by a Dark or Ghost attack, it usually can tank a hit. So as long as you don't let that happen, Calyrex Shadow Rider should be fine without the Focus Sash. But yeah, great team. For 3rd place, we have another Kyogre and Calyrex Ice Rider, though this one's set up pretty differently. This one is using Iron Jugulus with Snarl and Tailwind as an option for speed control. it has the Never Melt Ice on Calyrex Ice Rider and instead of Leftovers. This Calyrex Ice Rider also doesn't have Leech Seed. It's using Seed Bomb, which you can boost its power with Terra Grass and Grassy terrain. Very solid option. This team actually, on paper, doesn't look super good into Miraidon, but once you take into account the Rillaboom, Kyogre, and Calyrex Ice Rider both having Grass Terra, and a Moongus that can like redirect things, this team looks like it's super prepared for the Miraidon matchup. And Miraidon being very popular in the tournament, not surprised this did really well. I mean, it looks good overall. I'm not saying that it's just because Miraidon was popular, but this team looks like it would be really tough for like a Lunala Miraidon team to deal with. And then it also has Thunder on the Kyogre, which is uncommon, but probably there because of the offensive synergy between Ice and Electric. So Calyrex Ice has the Glacial Lance for the Ice move, Kyogre has Thunder for the offensive Electric type move. And then we have a Life Orb Urshifu Rapid Strike, who can just deal insane damage. Kyogre does have the Mystic Water. If they wanted to, they could have gave Urshifu the Splash Plate though. There must have been a calc that they actually wanted the Life Orb item on Urshifu for because they could have actually used a second Mystic Water essentially. Okay, and then in 4th place, we have a Cali Shadow and Zamazenta team. This one was unique because it had Tinglu on it. Raging Bolt and Champao seem like they're becoming more common partners. The Champao's kind of 50-50. Is a very good partner for Zamazenta. Boosts the body press damage that it's going to be dealing. And Zamazenta already hits like a truck, so a lot of Pokemon that can't handle this kind of combination. Champao does have Taunt on it as well, which is really cool. And then a Moongus, like I said, this is going to be on every team unless it's a Group Bonnet. But yeah, this one is a Focus Sash with Psychic, Encore, and Astral Barrage. This is kind of looking like not necessarily the only moveset for Calyrex Shadow Rider, but it's looking like the more dominant one right now. Encore just puts on a lot of pressure, kind of in the same way Whimsicott would pressure a lot of Pokemon to not be able to use Protect in Regulation G, where Miraidon teams were running around. Calyrex Shadow Rider is already the fastest Pokemon as long as the other team doesn't have Tailwind up. Tailwind is not running around too rampantly right now because these teams are so powerful that the turn you set up Tailwind could just lose you the game if the other team actually has enough offensive pressure to start taking knockouts immediately. So Calyrex Shadow Rider pretty much is the fastest Pokemon that we have, and if you Protect in front of it, you can't even do that to kind of like stall out a turn. It's just going to Encore you the next turn if it can't knock you out anyway. But other than that, the Tinglu looked very strong. I'm sure that it was crazy good into opposing Calyrex Shadow matchups. And then on stream, we saw it giving a Lunala a really hard time. Okay, and then in 5th place, we have another Calyrex Shadow Zamazenta team. This one also has Champao and Raging Bolt and a Moongus. So this is basically same team as the 4th, except the Champao does have Crunch. And then there's a Rillaboom instead of a Tinglu. So I would say this one's probably the more standard of the two. And the Rillaboom's going to make Miraidon teams very, give them a hard time. But Tinglu it's kind of just your preference on which one of those Pokemon in the 6th slot you want to have a better matchup into. Tinglu is also very good into Miraidon as well. Tinglu and Zamazenta have a lot of synergy because Zamazenta has crazy high defense. Tinglu increases its special defense, essentially. Reduces special attack damage you're going to be taking. And then Snarl's just really good right now in general. Then we have another Koraidon Cali Shadow team. This one also has the ability shield. And then they have the partners of Brute Bonnet and the Weezing, of course. Otherwise, there's no point to have the ability shield. I guess most notable thing here is that this Cali Shadow does have the Life Orb and it has Pollen Puff. So, great way to heal up some of your Pokemon. And this Pollen Puff does threaten Brute Bonnets, usually with a one-hit KO. So that's also a very solid reason to use Pollen Puff. Because Brute Bonnet without Terastallization does take quadruple damage from Bug-type moves. So definitely something worth noting. And then Dondozo, this is one of the... I don't think this is the first Dondozo we've seen in the top 8 of a big tournament, but it's one of the few. Substitute, Body Press, Order Up. I don't think we saw this on stream. No, I think we did, but I didn't notice what type of Order Up boost we got, but if you see body pressed, it's almost always going to be defense. There's certain matchups where Dondozo is just very good. Zamazenta, for example, especially if you have a defense boosting Dondozo, it can't do any damage to it, and it ignores its defense boost, so body press becomes pretty much useless. So certain matchups, Dondozo is just very good, but I'm sure most games you're just bringing the other 4, setting up the sun, not letting your opponent use their abilities, using Brute Bonnet to put things to sleep, and then trying to sweep with Calyrex Shadow Rider in the end game. Then our 7th place team, we have a Koraidon Lunala team. So Koraidon actually did do pretty good overall, even though his usage was kind of questionable from day 1 to day 2. I think that there were still certain people using certain archetypes that have been falling out of favor, but overall Koraidon's still pretty solid. It's looking like the Cali Shadow ability shield is the way to go. This is kind of like what we were seeing in the last regional that I covered, but Miraidon was the one that was the more successful in the past, and right now Koraidon Lunala is the one who slipped through. So basically the idea here is you've got Koraidon setting the sun, very strong, very offensive. You can boost your Fluttermane's speed. You've got Choice Scarf Chiyu, can deal crazy damage with Heat Wave. So you have all these fast options, and then you have a Lunala that can use Trick Room and Wide Guard as support moves. And then it can boost its special attack with Meteor Beam, which also activates and attacks the same turn when it uses its Power Herb, which is the item it has equipped. And then if you want to, you can use Ursaluna as a Trick Room sweeper if you feel like you'll have an easier time winning by setting Trick Room. And then last but not least, we have Terrapagos and Calyrex Shadow Rider. This is actually the same 6 that I've been using on stream lately. A little different. I was using Covert Cloak on Terrapagos. I think in a tournament, Leftovers is just so strong that that's obviously what you're going to be using. Covert Cloak's crazy good and best of 1 on the ladder though, so I set up my team kind of similar. It has Pollen Puff on Calyrex. I'm using Encore instead of Will-O-Wisp, but Will-O-Wisp is very good, especially into Zamazentas. So a lot of the games you don't even need Calyrex Shadow Rider necessarily, because the combination of Terrapagos, Rillaboom, Incineroar, and Amoonguss is just insanely powerful. And there's just teams that can't deal with it, especially if their main offense is special attack Pokemon. They're not going to be able to break through Calm Mind usually. And then if you knock out their physical restricted, if they have one, very hard for them to do anything. So I would go over this team more in depth, but obviously it's something that's been running around. We pretty much see it every single top 8. There's always one. I think the team's really good. It's not going anywhere. Unless somehow this became like team number 1, which I just don't think, even though it keeps doing very well no matter what the meta is, it never picks up into like crazy usage numbers. I'm sure there's you should have a game plan if you are going to one of these regionals. You should have a game plan into this team, at least an idea of what you're going to do, because it's been around 10% usage day 1 or 2. Yeah, I'm sure the people that like playing this team, they're just going to keep playing it, and it's good, so I don't see why you wouldn't. But that's pretty much it for the tournament. I do want to cover real quickly, just because I think it's significant. In place 9 and 10, we actually missed out on seeing Groudon in the top 8, just barely. So Groudon teams in both 9th and 10th place. I don't think we'll see him anytime in the near future though, unfortunately, even though this might be a good sign for the Groudon players. As I said earlier, this tournament had insane usage for Miraidon, and if Groudon couldn't make it into the top 8 when Miraidon was at its all-time high usage, I don't think we're going to see it in the future, because I think after this, we'll probably see Miraidon usage drop off a little bit. I don't think Miraidon's bad. Miraidon's very good. I just think that it was getting overused. I think people respected it heavily in this tournament, and now it's going to be kind of more evened out. If anything, Cali Shadow is probably enemy number 1 again. So we'll see how that affects the next tournament. I did want to give Groudon some praise here because we just barely missed out on talking about them in the top 8. So very cool. But that's going to be it for today's video, guys. Until the next one, happy battling.